Right now, crude oil costs 10% more than it did before the Hamas attack. Economist and expert member of the World Economic Forum, Talal Rafi, joined me in the studio for some insights. Talal, we are having two wars going on in the world at this time. What is the impact of the latest one, which is Hamas and Israel, will have on the world economy-wise?
So the impact's going to be a bit large the longer the war drags out. Like one thing is, the first thing is going to be on oil prices, which have already shot up a little bit. At the same time, we're also seeing Saudi a few months back cut oil production by 1 million barrels. So the effect's going to be a bit high. With oil prices going up, there's going to be inflationary pressures back on the global stage. And just when central banks are claiming to have some sort of success in taming inflation and trying to reduce the hikes, I think this might just get in their way. So it's going to have a sort of an effect on the global economy.
Which countries and sectors do you think would be the hardest hit?
Especially countries which are largely dependent on energy imports, like India, for one instance, China, and especially our country, Sri Lanka. So, and as far as sectors go, in particular, the tourism sector, because when oil prices go up, flight prices are also going to go up. So, especially when Sri Lanka is just recovering and the tourism numbers are going up, this might cause a dent, but only if the war drags out a bit longer and if it hopefully not expands and brings in other players in the Middle East into it.
So there's a double whammy here. We have the Russia-Ukraine war, we have the Hamas and Israel war that's going on. You mentioned oil prices rising. What is the sort of the mid-term to long-term impact this is going to have on oil prices and on countries like ours?
In the mid-term, prices are going to be high because it's always based on speculation. So oil prices, we could see a bit of a being on the increase, but it could get a lot worse. Like, for example, if other players come in, like if the war expands to Iran, which is already being accused of. There's an interesting fact the world many forget is that Iran literally can block off the Strait of Hormuz, through which 40% of globally traded oil goes through. So if there is an instance of blocking it, like, many countries, including Sri Lanka, could experience something like last July, a few weeks without oil, even in the extreme case of Iran being dragged into the war with the US and others. But also, especially with freight charges could also go up, especially as most of the shipping goes through that area, especially insurance rates will rise with the risk getting greater. So it's in the interest of the world that this is resolved as soon as possible and hopefully contained between the two players, Hamas and Israel.
Given Sri Lanka's dependence on oil, how do we manage these rising oil prices? And also, is there an alternative way for us to get our oil, given that we spend a sizable amount of our forex earnings on oil?
This is a point I always raise. If you look at renewable energy, like solar, wind, hydro, not just Sri Lanka, in any country, it's always within the borders. So you're not affected by global markets and speculation. So this is one area that Sri Lanka should learn a lesson. We've already should have learned it a few years back, but should go in this thing. And the fact that we need to notice that, according to a World Bank report, Sri Lanka has offshore wind power potential alone, just offshore wind power alone, which can exceed Sri Lanka's demand. So if you can utilize that alone, we could be a net energy exporter.